Hi, I'm Brenda Councill, and I'm on site of the Carol Grotney's Belk Library. It's located at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. And this is a commission that I am undertaking. It was commissioned by the Belks and by the university. And you'll see behind me a lot of scaffolding. This is just the beginning of 75 feet that will encompass the atrium. And the ascending walls and the angled ceiling I will paint. And I've worked on these designs for about 2 years. And this is the day when I'm just about ready to pick up my paintbrush. So, are there any other anticipated problems?
No, I don't know.
Well, this is the end of day 2, and it's been a grueling day, just working with the scaffolding people, trying to get it right. Should have been a lot further along, and basically I'm having to rework some of the structure, and so we're going to face another delay. Well, it's now the afternoon of the 3rd day, and we've had some setbacks. In fact, I've had to revise the whole scaffolding because it wasn't really up to my standards. So I've stopped the whole thing, and they're graciously redoing it per my request. So it's another lost day, and I'll just have to make up in overtime.
I said it'll be hard to get on, but we're gonna make you a deck right there, so you just step right on right there. And step around, stay on that deck.
Hello again, it's day 5, and we have faced a few delays. The scaffolding is a very meticulous erection that will scope 90 feet into the atrium. And at this point, we had to literally re-engineer the base of the scaffolding and the platforms. So we hope to complete by tomorrow, and I'll be happy to start within the next day or 2. This is a kind of a cross between it's a dark cherry. So to achieve that, I begin with a bright orange base coat, and then I mix up glazes that are a deepening darker brown, and those are put on with a series of brushes, a couple of which I have here, and then a variety of graining combs. These are heavily used. And I will, in fact, create the grain in the wood. And it's about a 4-step process, depending on the detail. Now, these are not as highly detailed as I would normally do because the detail would be wasted at this, at 80 feet up. So instead, I've made dark marked very dark marked grains. So these are very high contrast, so that again, 80 feet below, these will soften and create enough grain and deviation of the color to give depth. I don't want too much depth because this wood is a more expensive wood and the graining is not always advantageous, if, you know, the more expensive the wood in some cases. And then down here I am adjusting it to the perspective that would normally be gained on the 4th floor, and that's a floor below us. I'm taking a well-deserved break. I'm at the very top of the atrium still, and a spray gun is indispensable for laying in all of the background work that you see. Probably another 2 days at least for me to develop the clouds and the sun rays coming in, and the sun rays will be hitting the beams that are now covered up, these faux beams that I painted a few days ago. A certain way I do the sky, and it'll be about 16 different color mixes, and the clouds actually have a tonal variation of colors where the sun is hitting them, the shadow, so it requires a lot of change of colors. But to tone down this color of yellow, I've put a thin layer of gesso on, and the gesso will kind of block a lot of this yellow from bleeding through. Gesso is just a white pigment, very highly pigmented primer, and it is made of ground marble essentially, and which is whiting. Whiting and medium makes gesso. And the recipe of gesso hasn't changed in, 500 years or so. Okay, well, the spraying is over for a little while. But this was an essential part of laying in all of the background sky and developing the clouds. And so essentially, the sky is done. And you're viewing it from an angle that no other viewer will see it. Again, the vantage point is 80 feet below us. And so the clouds will appear very soft, very fluffy, and I'm just starting to work on the big beams again that form the atrium that I've painted in here. So the beams are going to, I'm painting a reflected sunlight on the beams right now. And that is, I will show you, you can see a little bit of light catching the beam over here, and then even more light is focused on the lower brackets below the beams. Again, remember your vantage point is looking directly up into it, so this is kind of, it's going to look very distorted. And by next week, I should be up on the upper level, beginning the limestone, faux limestone panels. On the rim, you see visible, it's a very beige color. I'm going to be painting what look like limestone reliefs. It'll look like a carved limestone panorama, like a frieze on a architectural building. But it's pretty intense painting, and while the light is really good up here, in the morning and the afternoon, the light is splendid. So those are the times that I'll be concentrating on this upper area. So what I'm doing, I'm just kind of putting highlights on, where I will paint
vegetation where the sunlight is hitting it. Well, it has been 20 days now, and I have progressed about on schedule, but the very top of the mural is where I've concentrated most of my time. And it's basically, it emulates limestone, carved limestone. And it is to appear as though it's a bas relief, like a frieze on a building. And the reason I chose limestone is because it's one of the most often used of materials to actually carve in, and it has a wonderful warm coloring to it. And so I've added highlights in areas where the faux carving would pick up the light the most. So you see very darks, which would emulate a deep carved area. And then the highlights are simply the surface of the stone. And the contrast is really necessary because you wouldn't have the whole illustration, the whole piece, the whole drawing wouldn't come to life at the 30 feet vantage point where people will be viewing it. So, these paintings are very loose. There's not a lot of detail. And again, that's because it's to emulate this carved limestone. And I didn't want all the detail purposely because it just would be too representational for this part of the mural. And it's really just to give imagery of the identifiable landmarks in this area. Create as I go along, even though I have to stay accurate since this is a real thing. I wanted to give the rock face that the road is built around, the idea that the road is built around the mountains, so I really exaggerated this rock face just to accentuate that. For instance, on these feature blocks, again, they're going to have the illusion of bas relief. So I've started dimensionalizing them so that they look like they're popping out another step from the other relief that I've already painted on, the landscape. And I'll do shadows around these, so it'll be pretty effective. This is an especially cramped area here. It's not easy, I must say. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about going to the lower level. Real excited. And because this is the library, the whole mural depicts the quest for knowledge, and I begin with sources of knowledge from the great civilizations to modern day. And in between the vortexes, I will actually have what will look like pages popping out of the wall. And the pages will represent academic programs here at the university, as well as the great civilizations, the great achievements of civilizations, Western and Eastern civilization. So what I'm doing now is I am basically adding on these vortexes that are coming into the library. They're filled with early alphabets from all over the world. I'm just trying to translate early communication, early forms of communication. And so these vortexes sort of become scrolls that have a feeling of what the ancients gave us. Well, I am finally approaching the end of painting the panels. And these actually are feature pages that kind of pop out from each vignette around the room. I'm down to the last few days putting finishing touches on, and I am now on the third level here. Right now we're at the base of the mural, and I'm going to be climbing up the ladder here to this level. One of the things that people don't realize when this is all unveiled, finished, and the scaffolding is down, is the physical nature of work like this. I'm climbing about 20 feet right now. I should, in fact, have a safety harness on, but I don't. And I'm coming to the mid-level, which is the band where I will paint the chosen quotes. And this is the last phase of the mural, which I'm pretty happy about. Well, it's day 41, and we are at the absolute end finish of the mural. It is 16 panels that are completed on this level, and there is a mid-level band that is now complete with the quotes, particularly the most important quote, I think, from Mr. Irwin Belk, and he is the generous donor that made this commission possible, as well as the ASU Foundation. On the upper level, we have the panorama of the mountainscapes and the open trompe-l'oeil atrium. So it's all come together and it's complete. And I'm pretty happy today. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, so that makes me even happier. Yeah, this is the disassembling of the scaffolding finally, and it's really nerve-wracking because at some of the areas we have just maybe a half-inch clearance to the painted wall, so it's very nerve-wracking. But they're taking their time, being careful, and it'll take them about 2 days.
Hey!